In this tutorial, we're going to go over how you define the ground floor in the Zebra model. The ground floor is similar to other elements of the building fabric in that we need to define an area and a U-value for it. But unlike other elements, like the walls and the roof, we also need to adjust the U-value to account for the buffering effect from the soil beneath the ground floor or the cavity, if there is one. So this is what the ground floor sheet looks like. In some ways, it's one of the simplest of the input sheets because it just requires us to define an area and a U-value. However, like I say, determining this U-value is a little more involved than on some of the other sheets for the building fabric. I'm just going to put in the ground floor area. And then for the U-value, there's a note to say that we can see the calculators tab. So we can go to this tab. And this gives us some tools to calculate the U-value for our ground floor. As I say, it needs to be adjusted to account for what it's sitting on top of, because the ground floor won't lose as much heat because it's buffered by the soil or by the cavity beneath it. So there's two cases that you can use. One is a slab directly on the ground, and the other is a suspended floor. So for the slab on the ground, we can define the U-value, which is purely from the construction. So this is based on whatever floor coverings you have or whatever floor insulation you may have. We can type in a U-value. The floor area is taken from the other sheet. The perimeter is also important in this case because most of the heat is lost around the perimeter of the ground floor. So you can determine the perimeter length for your ground floor. And then the thickness of your perimeter wall. And based on these inputs, the software will evaluate an adjusted U-value which you can input. So in this case, we would copy this value as our U-value for the ground floor. And once we've done this, it will present a summary of the space heating demand by month through the ground floor, and then also the space cooling demand. The other option on that calculators tab is a suspended floor. This is a little more involved. We put in a U-value. Again, we put in a perimeter length. Then we need a U-value for the wall and the height of the crawl space. We also need the seasonal wind speed. A typical value for the UK will be 5 meters per second. And we need the wall thickness. And this will calculate an adjusted U-value for the suspended floor case. So that's all we need to do to input values into the ground floor. If we increase the complexity level, we will find that there's no additional inputs required. There's just a more detailed summary of how these summaries have been calculated. So that's an overview of how you define the ground floor in the Zebra model. In the next tutorial, we're going to look at defining roofs.